Thank you to all members of the public, councillors and officers who are joining us for today's meeting. Please be aware that the council is video recording this meeting and this will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. I would just like to highlight some key points of the meeting format. Please can I ask everyone to have their phones turned off or set to silent. The fire exits are via the doors out of the chambers and down the external fire escape stairs or via the main entrance that you enter the building through. In the event of a fire, the lift should not be used. The assembly point is outside the Royal Mail Parcel Office on West Street. Please remain seated unless you are invited to speak or need to take a comfort break. So I'm skipping all the bits related to members of the public. That seems reasonable. If any councillor feels concerned about any aspect of the meeting or discussion, please clearly state point of order. I will then gesture for you to elaborate. If anyone present is felt to be behaving unacceptably, they can be ejected from the meeting by resolution. Thank you for listening. On behalf of the council, I would like to thank everyone for attending this town council meeting. So, agenda item 1, apologies. No?
Yeah, there's no apologies for absence.
Everyone's here. Full house. Agenda item 2, does anybody wish to disclose any interests? Councillor Walraven?
Thank you, Chair. Just to say that I'm council representative, Bishopstown United Charities and a trustee.
That's fab. Thank you ever so much. I think that's really helpful to know. And it doesn't require you to do anything different from what you would be doing normally. Agenda item 3, since we have no members of the public, I'm going to assume that there is no public participation. And so, agenda item 4, report on receipts, payments and bank reconciliations for February, March, April and May. Has everybody managed to read it? Any questions? No? I had a lovely time reconciliating the bank accounts. Sorry. Sorry, Liz, go for it.
I'd just like to propose that we accept the report.
Can I have a seconder? All in favour? Great. That was Councillor McWin who seconded. Brilliant. Okay. Number 5. F&GP year-end income and expenditure report. Any questions on this one? Comments? No? Okay. That's all
I
right.
propose that we accept the report and as I say, all the questions are answered within the report.
Seconder? Councillor Borman, all in favour? That's everyone. Number 3, not 3, 6, sorry. This is the F&GP report, general finance report to the 31st of May. So income and expenditure for 1st of April. Yeah, 1st of April to 31st of May. Any comments or questions? No? Can I have a proposer that we note the report? Oh, Councillor Wimmer. And a seconder, Councillor Borman. All in favour?
I like this meeting.
That's everyone, Chair.
Brilliant. The last one we were done in 58 minutes. I am aiming for a record today.
We will see.
We will see.
Don't count
Indeed, it was a little optimistic, wasn't it? So. Number 7. So this is the grant applications that we discussed at the working group. So we have several points. So if I open this for discussion, of if we've got any questions or comments. Sorry, Councillor Walraven.
Yeah, I think the working group worked very well. It was surprising how we managed to get to the total. But with the email from Gardens in Action, I did ask for some suggestions on their email, and maybe they could liaise with the community gardens in the Crouch to get for planting the perennial plants to lower their costs. They may work with them anyway, but I just thought it might be a suggestion.
Great, that's helpful, thank you, Councillor Walraven. Councillor Whelan?
First of all, I'm very impressed how thoroughly the group have obviously been through this. As someone who signed up for it but then couldn't make it, I'm very impressed because it's clearly been given a great deal of scrutiny, and I think that's very reassuring for the grant applicants to feel that every grant is being looked at and weighed up and explanations are given. So congratulations to the write-up group, because that's very good. I'm just a little bit disappointed that only 4% were, when you look at the pie chart, that only 4% is for the environment. And I just wondered if there was anything that we could do to perhaps encourage local groups, you know, the garden groups and horticulture and those kind of things in the future. So it's just a general comment.
Yeah, I think that probably reflects the sources of the applications as much as so where the applications are coming from. And I suppose one piece of general advice we would want to give to applicants is about separating out what they would like to spend the money on, because that was one of the things that we found, wasn't it? It made it easier to allocate money if we could be clear on exactly what it was being spent on. If that was a general message, but yeah, if we had more environment ones, that would be great. Do any of you want to say anything about the grants?
It's as it's presented really, so it's recommending that we, the Appendix A for the small grants is 1,275, and the large grants with Appendix B is recommending 21,443. So whilst there's £26,000 available, as mentioned in the report, not utilising the whole budget reflects sort of the fair and consistent way that the the approach was taken. So if it was to be agreed that was going to be the balance left over, we're also asking that amount can go into an earmark reserves at the end of the year, which can then go into the amount for next year.
And then the only other thing to mention in relation to, no, it's all right, I notice how you skillfully left that one with me, with Bishopstone United Charities, who asked for money to support a window replacement. Their application was dependent on the relevant consents having been obtained. There has been a mix-up in the processes that are not within our control, and so they've had to resubmit for planning consent for the windows. So what we're proposing to do is to make that grant conditional on them getting the planning consent. So nothing's changed, but we don't want to give it to them if they can't spend it. Councillor Warren.
Yes, we've got that application before us on Thursday. So,
yes. That's how it came to light.
So yes, there was a mix-up, and it was a mistake by Lewis Planning, why the first application was refused because they've got the application completely wrong, thinking that these rear windows at the back of the building were sort of overlooking the Grade 1 listed church, where they don't. and it was a mistake by Lewis, and fortunately they have come back and they're not going to charge for the re-application, so it should go through nicely.
So yeah, just to make sure that we're all, we're just everything's correct and in place. If we'll make that one conditional.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's okay. Any other comments or questions? No? Does anybody want to make any suggest any changes? Right. Okay. So, in that case, shall we take 1 and 2 together and then 3 separately, or would you like to take them separately? Councillor Baldwin.
Sorry, Chair. Do we think we make an additional recommendation on 4.3 that the money left over will be carried over for next year, as it's not mentioned in 1.3?
Motion 3.
It's motion 3.
Sorry.
4.3.
So
I did read it properly.
Yeah.
So she didn't give the amount.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So motion 1 is considering the grant applications, the recommendations. Motion 2 is agreeing the recommendations of the working group, and then motion 3 is keeping the leftover to put in an earmark reserved for next year. So would you like me to take them together or separately? Together. Right. So the motion is to consider the grant applications detailed in appendices A and B and note the recommendations of the Town Council's Grants Working Group. To agree the successful grant applicants in the 2024-2025 scheme and amounts to be awarded. To consider the recommendation of the Grants Working Group to earmark any underspend in the grants budget at year end. I have a proposer. Councillor Walraven, Councillor Borman seconded. All in favour?
Everyone, Chair.
Excellent. Agenda item 8. This is an update on the work schedule within the Town Council's policies. Georgia, did you want to say anything?
Yes, yeah, I mean, just a quick one really to say, so obviously at May full council, the council had a conversation around kind of how to better utilise this committee, kind of the general purposes bit of this committee. So what we've discussed is that at each F&GP meeting we'll bring an update on where we are with policy reviews, and it just gives this committee that chance to kind of touch base on that, ask any questions, see what's coming up in the remainder of the year. So really the report presented now is just providing you with a list of all of the policy reviews again, and just picking out some kind of the highlights that really need to be, or other highlights, sorry, just to be presented to the committee. So that includes the complaints procedure and internal communications procedure, both of which are coming to July full council, and have both had councillor groups working on them, which has actually been a really kind of positive and productive way of carrying out these policy reviews. It's been quite enjoyable, I think I can say, from an officer's point of view, of working together with councillors in that way. And then the other 3 just mentioned there, we've got the financial regulations, which obviously is a big review and is scheduled to come before this committee in October, and then on to full council after that. The members' allowance policy, which again was something full council has asked us to go away and look at, that is scheduled to come back to this committee. I think that's October 2, sorry, I haven't included that in the report, but I think we're aiming for October, so that's ahead of budget setting. So if there is a budgetary implication, we can include that in the budget setting process. And then the final policy we just highlighted there has got title to be confirmed, but at the moment we're just calling it procurement policy. And obviously, as we know, in June full council it was agreed to bring in an external expert to undertake that piece of work. So that will be getting arranged kind of in the coming months. But yeah, that's it really. It's just an update. So update for noting, but very happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Georgia. Councillor Buchanan and then Councillor Dubac.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Just a quick thing about the discussion about the review of the committee structures and all that kind of stuff. When will that be happening, and how does that get presented to various committees and what have you?
So we don't have a timescale on that piece of work at the moment. Adam and I, we've had a few conversations around the importance of it and recognising the need to get a timescale to it. At the moment, that piece of work would sit within my team to coordinate, and we're just getting kind of the staffing review work where it needs to be, and then we'll move on to committee structure review. So an idea on timescale and process, councillor involvement in that process, we'll update you all.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Dubac.
So on item E, you've called that procurement policy. What was agreed in June was a review of the tender and concessions policy. But since we don't have a tender policy and the concessions policy is only 1,000 words long, I think it needs to be adjusted to ensure it's not just procurement, it's tenders too.
Yeah.
So that's two different things.
So
but
that
the wording that you've got in this report is not the same as what was agreed in June.
Yeah.
So can it be amended, please?
That comes down to title, but yeah, that's noted, and it will include, basically we want it to include everything to do with tenders, concessions, procurement, you know, everything that comes under that umbrella, so rather than just being tenders and concessions. But yeah, completely take your point then, I'll make sure that that's mentioned.
Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else? Okay. The report asks us to note the contents of the report, so can I have a proposer? Councillor Weymouth and a seconder. Councillor Buchanan. All in favour?
That's everyone, Chair, thank you.
Okay, item number 9, the standing orders review. Georgia. Anytime.
So this is a policy document that is reviewed every year, that has practice to have it reviewed every year. There is a model version of standing orders that now releases, so we double checked back against that model to make sure there's no updates that we needed to be reflecting in our version, which there weren't. What we have done though, we have made a number of amendments, all of which are set out within the covering report. Really it's around kind of ease of use, you know, reading, trying to make it a bit more of a user-friendly document, and just, you know, looking at some of the terminology used to make sure it reflects what we actually use ourselves at Seaford, maybe rather than what now, you know, think we use. But like I say, all of the changes are set out there within section 1.5 of the report. And this would be this committee making a recommendation for full council to adopt standing orders, so it would have to go to full council in July for final adoption. But happy to take any questions from anyone.
Okay. Councillor Dubac and then Councillor Whitworth. Oh, and then
Page 81, item C, please. So it says, no motion should be moved at a meeting unless it's on the agenda and you've got to give 14 clear days notice. So if you look at the meeting we had on the 30th of May, 14 days prior to that is the 10th of May. We didn't get the agendas until the 24th of May, so we'll never ever be able to put a motion forward according to this. So that needs to be amended. That 14 days is wrong.
Can I help you?
Yes, sorry, please do. Yeah.
This is about the title of this section, Councillor Duval. Motions for a motion require a written notice to be given to the proper officer. So it's not all motions, it's just for additional motions. So how a meeting agenda is put together is the proper officer or relevant officer working with chair, and those are always released within the legal deadlines. if a council or group of councillors wish to propose something to a particular meeting that they don't think is going to be on the agenda, then they use this method to get those matters onto a meeting agenda, and that's what section 9 is for. So it's not for everything, it's for additional motions coming through basically proposed by councillors, and again we're following the now sort of guidelines in terms of the timescales for that, but this is to ensure that all due process happens before the public releasing of the agenda with these items on that agenda.
So,
Happy to clarify that.
for me, because I'm not familiar with this process, nowhere does it say additional motions.
Well, it's the title, motions for a meeting that require written notice to be given to the proper officer. It's the title of the section that's explaining what circumstances we're talking about. So I mean, I completely understand your question, and that's why, as Georgia says, we've gone back through the standing orders, we've made additions and amendments, as you can see, to try and help them to be as clear as we can possibly make them. So, very happy to clarify. Essentially, motions happen in three ways. Okay, there's the most motions go through the general meeting agenda, which again is determined by the chair in connection with proper officer or relevant council officer, and that's the agenda that comes out within the legal deadline. Second, I'll do all three types. That's nearly every motion we do. For example, all the motions tonight, for example, have been done like that. Secondly, we may find during a meeting that councillors wish to propose particular motions. And what this section of the standing orders is all about, really, is that there's only very particular things that can be done during a meeting. Okay? And actually effectively presenting, if you like, new business can't be done actually during the meeting, because any new business would have to be on the agenda that goes out 3 clear working days before for legal reasons. But the things that you can do during the meeting, again, are set out here within the standing orders section. And that leaves the third category. And the third category is almost, I mean, I'd almost call it exceptional, really. It arises where councillor or councillors wish to put an item onto a meeting agenda that hasn't gone through the normal process of the chair and proper officer putting that agenda together. It's very unusual for that to happen. It's only happened about twice in the 3.5 years that I've been here. So it's not a very common occurrence, but it's there. It's a really important right. It's basically giving the councillors the right to propose things for meetings. That's what it's for.
But you can't, because you can never meet the deadline.
Well, yeah, you can, but you can do meet the deadline, because it means that the proposal of a motion has to come to the proper officer whose legal responsibility is to put the agenda together, has to be to that person within the deadlines that are set out within the standing order.
So it doesn't have to be linked to the agenda.
No.
Okay.
No,
right.
exactly. I mean, how the council would work would be if I get that sort of request, again, often in consultation with relevant chairs, I'll go, well, this looks like planning, this looks like FNGP, this looks like community services, do you know what I mean? And sort of try and send it to the right place, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And as you know, my door's always open, so I'm always very happy to work with any councillor who wishes to have a particular item of business on an agenda and explain to them how that can be possible.
Okay, thank you.
Just on that note, I wonder if I could maybe recommend, just thinking
Go for
about,
it.
as I kind of introduced it, talking about trying to add in some plain English,
Exactly.
whether there's an additional section in this that is called preparing agendas, and we then point to our agenda and minutes policy, so there won't be much in it. But then we set out what you've just said, Adam. So we say, motions get onto agendas in 3 ways. 2 are already set out here, so it links in quite nicely, and we just add in a simple one about, kind of the most common one, which is reports that are written and presented. So, like you said, Councillor de Bass, it's for anyone who doesn't understand how it works in practice, they can pick this up and see quite easily.
That's a good idea.
Great, let's do that. Great idea,
Yeah, that's does this follow?
Yeah, I just want to endorse that. I don't know, do we need that as a motion tonight, or?
What we could do, so the motion could be to recommend full council adopts the standing orders as amended in the meeting, and then we can work on that amendment, we'll track it, and then the version that comes to full council will show what's been amended between this meeting and what you're considering next week.
I think that will be very helpful to new councillors in the future as well.
Pretty helpful for me as well.
Yeah, that's great, thank you.
Is it still me? Because I've got another point.
If you've got another point, that's fine, carry on, yeah.
So item H, the decision of the proper officer to whether or not to include the motion on the agenda shall be final. But should that be with the proper officer and the chair? Shouldn't it be the two of them that decide?
This is about legal responsibilities. So the person who is legally responsible for the agendas of council meetings is me, proper officer, and that's a fact of legislation.
Right.
So we're just following legislation in terms of how this is done. As I've explained, and as I'm happy to explain, and as it sort of comes up, especially within our policies as well, that supplement the standing orders, my approach as proper officer is to work with councillors and chairs. So I'm never going to get on my high horse about that one, if you know what I mean, but it's just, I am legally responsible for that, and that has to be written like that here.
Yeah, okay, understood.
Yeah, I've got Councillor Walraven next to me. But did you want to follow? Do you have something? No? Councillor Walraven.
Okay, it's just a small thing really. It's on page 66, C. It's when given permission by the chair of the meeting to speak to councillors. Councillors shall stand while addressing the chair. But it goes on and says for committee and subcommittees. We've only ever done it for full council.
Yeah, and I'm very clearly not insisting on people standing now.
That's a fair point.
Yeah, I think this was added in the 2021 review because we had a big kind of review of standing orders where there was a task and finish group actually of councillors looking at them. I think that's when that was brought in, but actually I think you're quite right, Councillor Raven. It's never been enforced, has it? Yeah.
So can we delete that, please?
I think some of the other points though, like you address the chair and no other councillors speak while someone's speaking. But it's just it's just point C.
Just point C
needs to have just full council.
Yeah, I'll make that clear.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Thank you. Couple of points about the sort of preparation time and length of meetings. So 3B, page 70, going into 3C on page 71. This is a minimum of 3 clear days notice, and that includes Saturdays. So is that in and out guidelines, or is that something a local?
Yeah, so that's actually the legal minimum.
That's the legal minimum?
Yeah.
Because it seems like we're getting closer and closer to the actual meeting date, actually encroaching on staff time for weekends, etc. And it feels a very short period of time for preparing, dispatching and then reading very complex papers. So my question was, is it legal and can we alter it? Can we give it a longer period of time, say 5 days, just to try and give people a little bit more breathing space? Because we have discussed the fact that it's actually quite nice to read the papers and then go away, think about them and read them again. I think it helps the quality of the discussion and people feel less pressurised, because sometimes if you read things through again you can alter, you have a different view of things, you have more to give an opinion on at the meeting. But everything seems very pressurised at the moment, and I just wondered, would lengthening this to say 5 days, would that help staff? I know it would certainly help councillors, bearing in mind quite a lot of them have got full-time jobs, etc. But would it help staff as well?
I mean, I think what I'd say is, so the standing orders reflect the legal minimum, they reflect the model standing orders. The town council's agendas and minutes policy sets out our our aim of having agendas out kind of 2 clear weekends before, you know.
Right.
So that is still our ever hopeful aim, that we're able to give councillors 2 weekends with reports for the very reason you've just said. Sometimes we're able to share reports in advance, if not, you know, the full agenda. So I think we did that actually with this meeting. We shared some of the reports in advance. I'm still wedded to that being what we're striving to achieve. You know, we did used to be able to achieve it in the past. I think we've slightly got in the pattern where because we're not achieving it with one agenda, there's then the knock-on effect where it's very hard to do 1-2 weeks in advance when the others haven't been. So, you know, I think, speaking for both of us, I think we're still committed to getting back to that point where we're giving you 2 clear weekends, because we know councillors need the time, you know, you need that time to digest it, to consider it, to engage with the public about it if you want to. So it's definitely there in the other policy that we strive for that. It's just us needing to make that happen.
So this is the minimum legal deadline,
Yeah.
but the aspiration in the policy is more generous.
Yeah.
And I also, on page 74, 3P, similar thing, 3 hours meetings. Is that an out recommendation as well? Certainly they feel very long. After 2 hours, things feel very long and quite demanding, both of councillors and of chairs, really. And
Shall I say? I've been here to midnight before that ruling came in. Sorry, Chair.
No, you.
Sorry, Chair, what I would say seriously is that that's something that was very much within the remit of the committee review that we're going to be having. Is about how many meetings, how often and what for. Because as an officer team, we have a lot of meetings. So thinking about making meetings shorter, that means more meetings. Looking at the calendar, there isn't much scope, looking at the face of it, of making more meetings than we have, because most Thursdays we've got meetings. But that's where we're more overarching review. By looking at the thing in the round, maybe we'll find a better solution than we have at the moment. And I think that's why we're really committed to the 2 weeks in advance thing. The only slight caveat I have to give to that is a personal one, which is that because of the legal requirement for signing off the reports, I basically have to be working on, you know, around the time of the legal deadline for each meeting. And if I sort of sign up, so if I have to sign off all the reports the 2 weeks as well, then I'll be here all the time. Or if all the time, then I'll be here all the time. So it's a good example of that is that we've got obviously full council next week. I was on leave last week because that was a week where there wasn't a deadline around a meeting, but that was still 2 weeks before another meeting. So we just had to, you know, when we're doing the committee, we've just been mindful about what will be operationally possible. But we're really committed to getting you stuff as early as we can. We totally understand your point.
Councillor Buchanan.
Thank you, Chair. We visit page 70, 3, item B. Talking about a minimum of 3 days clear notice for full council meeting. I've got my council meeting guidelines for next year, but this doesn't actually mention the agenda issue. It just talks about the notice for a meeting. So I don't know whether there's if it's inherent in that this means an agenda, 3 days clear notice or what?
Yeah, so that's your summons, is your agenda.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the legal requirement is that there's 3 clear days notice of the meeting, which is the summons to councillors and the public being aware of what we're discussing at a meeting. The legal 3-day requirement is also about councillors having notice of what decisions you're being asked to make.
Yeah.
So as a town council, we take the approach of issuing all of the reports and appendices as part of giving you that information. Some other councils say they don't publicise their reports, they just publicise the agenda front sheet, and that satisfies this clause. You know, for longer than I've been here, we've done the approach of publishing our reports, but the 3 clear days notice is also about, like I say, councillors knowing what decisions you're going to be asked to make, because that's been deemed kind of the minimum amount of time you need to consider that.
Just vocabulary here wasn't that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, so the motion that I've got then is to recommend that full council adopts the standing orders policy document as presented with the report and as amended in the F&GP meeting.
Correct, Chair.
Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Walraven and a seconder? Councillor Bowman, all in favour?
Chair, thank you.
Lovely. So, I would now like to move to exclude the press and the public.
Just read the bit before the action. Just the
This bit.
The first bit.
The Chair will move that in accordance with the Public Bodies Admissions to Meeting Act 1960, the press and public be excluded from the meeting during the discussion on the next item of business for the reasons set out below.
That's it, that's all it's on.
Can I have a proposer?
You just
I proposed it. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Wearmouth. Brilliant. All in favour?